Hi. The last thing I wanted to point out with is issuing these commands through the command station or through your throttle. Uh, the issue is using these signal commands. You can't, command stations don't support that. Well, even if they do support the NMRA standards for the signal decoders, uh, to give it the command, you can go to the screen to run locomotives, and you have an option to switch to turnouts, and you input your turnout, and you say flip in this direction. But the command stations don't have an option where you can go in a menu that says, okay, I'm running signals and turn that head red or yellow and green and so forth. So how do you end up? The question is, how do you end up issuing those commands? And in this case, I'm using JMRI, and I have this tool, which is what I was showing you before, and that's how that's done. And the other thing to point out, here's another screen here, is this is the CSCe board. Let me see. And here's where it gets a little confusing, but what happens is you give it information about the signal heads, and you're telling it under what conditions to do what. So in this case, just to give you a first example, is I'm telling it here, let me see, sensor 30, or address 30, which is a sensor. If it goes high, yeah, so high, or is address 36, which is a switch. So if the switch is thrown, and the third option is 0, so it's only under these two conditions. So if sensor 30 is occupied, or the switch 36 is thrown, then over here it'll send the DCC signal, which is the signal for the heads. It'll put address head number 1 will go red. So I'm saying if the sensor is occupied, so if that block is occupied, or the switch is not pointing to that block, then make it red. And then the second step over here is, see, this is called step 101, and this is step 102. So I'm saying if sensor 101, which means if this step above, sensor 101, sensor message is low, and let me see, and the sensor 35, which is another block, if that sensor is high, and if the turnout 36, which is a switch here, turnout is thrown, then put the light yellow. So basically, what you're telling is, if it's not red, so the first thing you have to make sure to check is to make sure that if it's not red. So if it's not red, make it, if it's not red and the preceding block, in my case it's number 35, it is occupied, and the turnout is thrown, then make it yellow. Somewhat confusing, eh? And then the third step is under another condition. So I'm saying if 35, block 35 is high, and block 36 is thrown, and it's not occupied, yellow. Here on the next step, I'm giving another condition for yellow, because it's checking there's a turnout. Actually, the way it is there's a turnout, so it's checking the two options, 2 tracks ahead, which is what their conditions are to make it turn yellow. So the other block is 36, and the turnout is 87. So it says if the block ahead is high, occupied, and the turnouts are switched to that block, then it's yellow. So this is one condition of yellow, and this is the second condition of yellow. If you have like 5 turnouts connected to this one block, then you'll have to have 5 yellow conditions. And then now what happens is the next one becomes green. So it's saying if block 101, so if it's not red, and this becomes number 102, which is referring to this guy up here. So if it's not red and it's not yellow, because it's saying low conditions, if they're not occupied, if it's not red and it's not yellow, and the switch 36 is set to high, which is the route that we're choosing, we want to go to, then make the light green. So if it's not red, so it's not yellow, then make it green. and this repeats the second option, because you have two options for yellow, you have to have two options for green. So in this case, if it's not red, which is step 101, which was up there, and step 103, which is the second. See, 102 was the first yellow condition, and 103 was the second yellow condition. So now when we go to here, we say 102 is the first yellow condition, and 103 is the second yellow condition. And if the turnout is thrown, which is pointing to the track we want, then that guy goes green. So that's how my options are. It becomes red, yellow, green. So this, once you program all this information into the device, it becomes standalone. It's checking to see where the turnouts are flipped. It's checking to see where the trains are in the blocks preceding. Yeah, blocks preceding. No, blocks ahead. It's the block ahead. If the block ahead is occupied, then he is yellow. So it's the block ahead, and also if it's green. So what happens, and then that all information is set to that the CSCe board, which controls the signal. So now what happens is you're not there changing the signals, telling them to go red, yellow, green. The system is doing it. You can, by using the software over here, you can go in and manually through LocalNet, JMRI, and issue the commands to change the lights and stuff. But basically you want it to be a standalone system, because you don't want to be operating the lights yourself. You want the system to be running it. And in this case, the system is that hardware, the CSCe board. If you did use JMRI, you can use the JMRI panel, where you create your diagram of your layout. And then let me see, I might have a quick version that I have. Let me see. Panel, open panel. Come on. So what happens is, from the panel, you can have your diagram of your map, and then you can have your signals on the panel, and then click your icons